Rodcast with Rod Black, brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win. Now here's your host, Rod Black.
Well, welcome to another edition of the Rodcast. This time, we're in studio. And it's only when we're in studio that we have a very special guest. And who better than my pal, Craig Forrest.
How you doing, Blackie? Nice to see you.
Soccer, football. I'll call it football for you because do you get mad when people say soccer?
Not really. It's kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, or footy.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Major League Soccer, Toronto FC.
Yeah.
So it's interchangeable.
Anyway, great Canadian player, broadcaster, all-around good guy. And here we are on the verge of another World Cup. This one more significant because Canada's in.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
It's so cool. I mean, it's been an incredible run. And just the run itself, and then what happened for 2 decades before that, just one disaster after another. And then the last cycle with Honduras getting slaughtered, and that wasn't even in the final stage yet, you know. So it's a lot of disappointments. And then John Herdman comes along to the program, turns the women's, we continued on a progression with the women. I think they were still very good. We're way well ahead of the world for the most part.
He's been a footy whisperer though, hasn't he? John Herdman. There's something. What is it about him that makes him so special? That makes him such a winner and that helped? I mean, it's also the generation and the players.
Right.
But was he the secret sauce?
I think so. I really do. Yeah. I never doubted that he would do well because with Sportsnet, we followed the national program women's and we did Olympic qualifying before 2012 where they got bronze and that whole screwed up with the U.S. situation and everything, which was really kind of added to the theater, I think, of that, and it was nice that they won the bronze as opposed to, it's silver, sometimes when it's like when you finish second, it's like, it's better than bronze, but no, you won the bronze medal and that was special.
Silver, you lose gold.
Right.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit more heartbreak to it, I think. But so they did really well, and then he gets a chance to move into the men's program, and he did that quite seamlessly too, because you got to think where the women are coming from, what they think about that. Like he's talks such a great thing and the team and bonding and family, and then he moves over to the men's program. So would they feel abandoned? Well, no, because he's such a good people person that, he's always challenging them to challenge themselves. And it's not that the men's program is, bigger and better, but it is bigger at the moment and it's more challenging and the competition and whatnot. So he's challenged himself and he believes in himself and he got an opportunity here. But you have to remember too, John, he also grew up really tough, right? Like in northeast of England, what was it? Ormskirk? Not Ormskirk. Little town about 14 miles outside of Newcastle, hit really hard with unemployment and grew up to that. He's a small guy. You can imagine the bullying he would have got. He couldn't play football well enough because he's so small. And then opportunities for guys like that in England are few and far between.
It is an amazing story though, when you think about it.
Yeah. So he ends up in New Zealand. I think him and his wife basically put the plane tickets on a visa, didn't have the money.
He's the Ted Lasso of England, goes to New Zealand.
That's
starts the program. And like, I hate to be cliche, but if you watch Ted Lasso, which is a fantastic show,
isn't it?
It's great.
It really is.
The word believe.
Yeah.
I think that is entrenched in John Herdman's psyche.
Yeah. I mean, these guys will go out that game of Belgium and anything could happen. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they got something from it. It wouldn't surprise me if Belgium won 4-0 either. Like, I mean, but I do know they're going to have a go. And they'll walk on that pitch and they'll think that they're going to win the World Cup. Like, that's what they will believe. Now, will that get knocked out of them in the first game? I hope not. I don't think so. But that's what they'll believe.
So let's, because there's so much I want to talk to you about, including your journey in the game. But let's talk about, the lead up to this World Cup and Qatar and how hot it's probably going to be there at the same time, but also the injuries that have suddenly crept up for Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, the injuries, last week, I guess.
That timing, huh? Like terrible
timing, but the World Cup's terrible timing. It's in the winter. The leagues in Europe are playing heavy schedules. They're playing three games a week, and that's a lot of pressure. Usually, 2 a week you can handle. But for the last 2 months, they've been doing this. They've been cramming in European competitions. They've been cramming in their league schedules because of this long break. Premier League's back playing, I think, 3 days after the World Cup ends. and then they got a cup game, and then 3 days after that, the Premier League kicks in again. So it's intense for them, and nobody's really thinking of that. They just want Premier League, want what they want, or the Bundesliga or the Serie A or whatever league. They all want their money and their cake, and so does UEFA, and so does FIFA, and the players are the ones that are getting hurt. So there's always a chance, right? And I thought we were going to get away with it, and for the most part, we have. Alfonso was a scare, but luckily
He's going to be okay, right?
he's going to be okay. Bayern Munich said to Canada that he's going to be fine for the World Cup, but we don't want him playing in that friendly against Japan, which is just before the World Cup. They do have a say in that because he got injured with Bayern Munich. So Bayern Munich as well would be dealing with 12 different associations. I mean, their players are playing for every country in the world. I mean, he is a Tier 1A player. So it's interesting how that they do have a say in that and whether he would play. And believe it or not, I mean, if this was a qualifying section, he wouldn't be coming. They would just shut that down. He would not be coming. Remember, he only played 7 of the 14 qualifying games anyway. To show how deep Canada was, Alfonso was missing for 7.
How important, though, is Alfonso Davies to be healthy to get a first win? Canada has been at the World Cup before in 1986.
Yeah.
We did not win. But I think, when you look at the rankings, I mean, 12, 22 in that group.
Yeah.
Canada's 41.
Yeah.
Odds makers, betting man would say. But with this team, this group of players, I get a sense that those rankings don't count. Am I wrong in that?
Yeah, well, this is what we hope, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and is it dependent on Alfonso Davies?
no, well, not necessarily, because I mean, he played, like I said, in 7 of the 14 group stage matches for the last group. He was missing for 7. I mean, usually when you're missing, Canada, missing anybody like that, you're out, you're done. But we showed that we have so much depth, right? And the rest of the players have lifted their game. So I think we're stronger than the parts that we have, or certainly on paper. So, even guys like old player I played with at Chelsea, Frank Leboeuf, World Cup winner in '98, he's got Canada going to the semifinals.
Wow.
Like, okay.
Do you have Canada going to the semifinals?
If my life depended on it, no, absolutely not. If my life depended on it,
Your heart says. Well,
my heart says.
My heart says Canada's winning the World Cup.
Yeah,
but
right.
goodness,
Right.
for Canada to win a World Cup, and let's keep in mind what the women did at the Olympics too.
Yeah.
But for Canada to win the World Cup would be akin to a United States hockey team. Oh wait, they did that back in 1980. So you know what I mean? Like
That's right. It would
be. I don't want to use the term miracle. A lot of stuff would have to fall in place. Obviously.
It would have to, yeah. I mean, I've obviously dig deep in sort of many things as Morocco, the teams as well, Croatia and Belgium.
You got to get out of that pool first.
You got to get out of
top 2.
that. So you got to be top 2. Belgium have a stack of Tier 1 players. They are a golden generation. They're getting older. Where
Ranked number 2 in the world.
ranked number 2 in the world, but they're also, because they're getting older, having some issues with the physical side of things. Lukaku's questionable whether he'd be able to be fit for that first game, and a few of the other ones as well getting a little bit that way. So hopefully that could catch them off guard. But they are, Kevin De Bruyne, Man City player alone, he can win games on his own. He's done that for Man City this year, even when Haaland hasn't played, and he is 3rd in Ballon d'Or, which is World Player of the Year. This guy can change games. Go to Croatia, then you got Luka Modric, 37 years old. He's playing like he's 18 years of age. Like he's just running it, like he's unbelievable. I don't know how he's doing it, but he again can master games. They have depth. They have Perisic. They have Croatian side, and they got a lot of heart. Like I played with 3 of them. Davor Šuker, one of the greatest ones ever. Slaven Bilic, Igor Stimac were at West Ham, playing with those guys, and they finished 3rd, I believe, in '98. So, yeah. And that spirit that they have, I mean, they're a pretty new country, right? And all the breakup of, the former Yugoslavia. So there's, a lot of heart there.
So is the match with Morocco the match when you look at it? I mean, a first one against Belgium, if you could pull off an upset,
yeah,
you could really put yourself in a driver's seat potentially.
Yeah.
But if the chips fall the way they, predictors probably think they might, is the Morocco match the big one?
They hope it means something, right? If they have to win against Morocco, I think they would take it to get out of the group. That would be a fantastic thing. But Morocco's another side. Most of the players aren't born in Morocco. They're They've benefited from the immigration into Europe a couple of generations ago, and building in Belgium, Switzerland, Spain, Germany, France, of course, lots of French Moroccans as well. So they benefit from that. And they got a really strong side. They're playing in a lot of top clubs, and they cruise through qualifying as well, score a lot of goals. So, and that African region is unpredictable, but they certainly are a side that would think the same as Canada, that we got a shot to getting out of the group. So that's what you're kind of dealing with.
I should mention that you are one of the stars of Footy Prime as well on with the Toronto Stars podcasts. How many days a week are you doing that, by the way?
4.
So you don't sleep. You're like
Actually, you know what it's like. You got your studio about 5 feet away from your bed.
So that was the only good thing that ever happened. There's nothing good that happened because of the pandemic. The only good thing was that you could actually do television or whatever it is, monitor vision from home, the Zoom.
And then it became acceptable.
Yeah. Well, again,
Right?
You could never do it before. Because it was on CNN or CBC News, suddenly, we can do it off your computer.
Yeah, before it was like, can you get to the studio and sit there in front of a camera and do all this? It was a real effort. Now it's just prop yourself up.
So what's it like though, in your own little cocoon, your footy cocoon? Do you have all your matches going? Do you have all the stats going? Is it like Studio Forrest?
Yeah, pretty much. I don't have multiple games. Brendan Dunlop loves multiple games on, but I tend to like to watch one at a time and hop around a little bit, but depending on how the games are going. But yeah, not quite that crazy.
And I know it's gained a lot of traction. You have a lot of followers. And the reason I ask you is because I couldn't imagine the traction and steam you're going to have leading up to something that Canada hasn't been involved with in eons. How old were you in 1986?
Well, in fact, I was in England already. I went to England in 84.
Yeah.
So for 2 years I was over there. Actually, in fact, Ipswich were phoning up the CSA saying,
And
the crickets.
Yeah.
Crickets. Yeah. The CSA haven't really, everything's kind of done independently.
But so imagine, I would imagine, I'm not speaking for you, but you might have had some FOMO over the years, fear of missing out. Yeah. As a football, soccer star in Canada, one of the best keepers we've ever had, the best keeper we've ever had, and doing all of these things for the game. Isn't it crazy to think that it took this long? It's almost like to a hockey fan. I cannot believe that the Maple Leafs, Toronto fans, haven't won a cup in a long time or haven't won a first round. Is that the similar kind of sentiment you must have around soccer and football? Because you would have thought potentially you might have been at a World Cup.
Well, yeah, and the frustrating thing is, like, 1990, there wasn't a FIFA rule, so the clubs didn't have to release you. They just say, no, we're not releasing you. And I mean, there's a bit of a story about that because in 1990 or 1989 or maybe even 88, when the World Cup qualifying started, Canada had to play a pre-qualifying round against Guatemala, home and away. Shouldn't be an issue, right? 86 guys were around, blah, blah, blah. And in England, I hadn't been in the first team in an awful long time at Ipswich. And the manager, John Duncan, actually passed away recently, so, God rest him. He's a fantastic man. But anyway, he said to me, the way I function at this club is if anybody's playing well, I'm not going to take them out. So you can go to Canada and play for Canada, but the backup keeper's going in, and if he plays well, just expect when you come back, you might not get in. But if you want, I'll take the pressure off you. So instead of you saying no to Canada, if you decided you want to stay with the club, I'll say I won't release you. Take the pressure off you. So that's what I did. And then we ended up losing on away goals, drew 4-4, I think, and lost on away goals. And it was like such a great chance to make it. Like 86, Mexico didn't have to qualify. So that qualifying Mexico wasn't there. They were hosting it, right? So 1990, they were banned for playing overage players in an under 17 tournament. So they weren't even in the qualifiers. So we had this great, what you had to do is get to the last
golden ticket almost.
Golden ticket. U.S. wasn't really good. They were becoming a factor. And then 1994, same thing, before they expanded the World Cup qualifying to 3.5 teams in CONCACAF. So 1994, we finished second. today, that would get you in.
In.
We were tied with Mexico going to the last game. We got screwed over in Honduras for bad penalties that actually they came back and drew 2-2. So it took 2 points away from us. So we needed to beat Mexico at home in Toronto on the last game. We were told it was going to be all pro-Canadian. It was sold out crowd, but it was 50% Mexican. We got whistled when we came out, in Canada. And part of soccer is the fans are so influential in the game that you need that. And we're usually playing away at home.
It says a lot, though, about how far the sport has come. The sport has come in Canada. And again, because of the timing when you were born and when you grew up playing it, it didn't rival, even in participation, I would argue, other sports. Now I would argue that the two sports that are played more by any Canadian, it's not hockey. Mm-hmm. It's soccer and basketball, because you have an opportunity. It's simple. And now there is a following for this sport.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And that's basically a lot of people
media
say
too. I'm going to blame, I'll blame us too. I'll blame the media.
Yeah.
You did not get the coverage. There was no MLS then. You did not get the coverage.
Yeah.
If there was a little soccer write-up, it was in the the bottom of the Star or the Globe and Mail, right at the bottom. Oh, and Craig Forrest backstops Canada.
And it hasn't changed.
How frustrating was that, though?
Well, yeah. And
now you're a media guy.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I mean, in 1993, we played in, because we finished second CONCACAF, it was called 1 1/4 spot. So we actually had a backdoor route, but that was Australia, home and away. And if we beat them, then we had to play Diego Maradona in Argentina. And then if we beat that, then we were in the World Cup. And you talk about games and just fishiness around it. That game against Mexico, for the first time only in my career, a German referee came over and refereed that game. In CONCACAF. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and it was very bizarre. And we as a team...
Give me your best conspiracy theory on that one.
Well, okay, I'll give you one. There's no way in 1994 that FIFA could afford Mexico not being in the United States. And if we beat them, there was a fairly good chance that they were going to miss out, or Argentina. Mm-hmm. And they didn't want either one of them to miss out. They sell more jerseys almost than anybody. It's almost like a home World Cup. Mexico have to be there. It was a big thing. We talked about this when they were in Hamilton against the U.S. John Herdman brought the pitch in, right? Is all within the legal diameters of the FIFA rules, but he brought it in because he wanted to narrow the pitch because of the U.S. and they like to play with some width and wide players and whatnot. That's what we want to do with Mexico. Cut it down 2 yards on each side. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it is, especially when you're playing against a technically gifted side. I mean, we're talking about Hugo Sanchez. And
they love to run, love open field.
Right. So we wanted to do that. We came to the game and it was actually wider, and it was as wide as it could possibly be at Varsity Stadium. It was just nearly on the track. And it was just so strange, just everything about that. And
years later, does stuff like that piss you off? Like, I mean, it's easy to look back and go, because you tried so hard. You're this close, and then you realize outside forces may have had something to do with it.
Yeah, well, we thought that a long time. I mean, the Gold Cup in 2000, Jack Warner, Sepp Blatter, Chuck Blazer, these guys are all, well, Blazer's dead, but he was going to go to prison. Sepp Blatter, where he's got, what his situation is now. Jack Warner, they want him extradited to the United States from Trinidad and Tobago. He's got enough protection there that they won't. These are like outright criminals running the organization. Yeah. And we knew this for years. And every time, and we played Trinidad in the semifinals of the Gold Cup. And referee gave them a penalty. It wasn't particularly, it was dodgy a little bit. And it's like, we were fighting that. We always felt that we were a man down anytime we played. And then we didn't have the advantage of playing at home in front of a really, boisterous crowd that would get behind us and things like this. In fact, if we played Jamaica, we played them in Toronto or in Vancouver, in Burnaby at Swangard Stadium. And we came up.
Love Swangard Stadium.
Isn't it a beautiful setting?
Oh, I love it.
Great for track and field. And all.
Beautiful place.
Yeah. So we come out and they've got a Jamaican steel band playing. Oh. And they're doing limbo dancing and all that. They were great, but, right? The place was full of Jamaicans.
We are in Canada.
Right? Right. And you know what? It hasn't, as much as this cycle seems as though massive changes have happened. I can go back one of our earlier podcasts, nearly about two and a half years ago. Alex McKechnie was on there that night, and John,
director of sports science for the Toronto Raptors, a guy who has got a ton of championship rings, great friend of yours, great.
Right.
I would imagine has done a lot for you physically as well through the years.
He was
Yeah.
20 years ahead of, that core training stuff. He was doing that.
Shout out to Silver. We'll get to Silver in a sec. So,
Alex
sorry, I
McKechnie.
didn't.
Yeah, so then Fitzy was also on there too.
John Fitzgerald.
Canada plays in Toronto midweek against the United States. The place isn't even half full. And they won that game. It was a massive game for Canada. It was a Nations League, whatever. It wasn't even half full. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like, if this was Toronto FC playing against Columbus Crew, this place would be packed.
Yeah.
What is is there no belief in this team?
Well, promotion, belief, media.
Yeah.
So where it is now, it still has growth, where the game has come. But oh my goodness, it must make your heart just burst at the seams with how everybody's talking about great players like Davies and David and yourself from the past and Dwayne De Rosario and the Hall of Famers and everybody, Jose Altidore. You go on and on of people who've made an imprint on the sport in Canada and where it's going. And I would suggest that you're not even 50% of where it could be.
I would agree with that, yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to forget because it's like the evolution of it is quite slow at times, right? It seems slow, but you look where the women's program has gone. I mean, we're looking for a league for them. I mean, economically, it's when it comes down to that, it's really tough. I mean, they got the Canadian Premier League going right now, and that was a must. We needed to have that. But again, that's losing money. You know what I mean? Like, so...
business, economically, it has to make sense.
It has to make sense, and it's difficult the size of us. It's not like in England you get on a bus. And the rest of the world has got really serious about women's football too. England, when I was playing there, nothing. Like, you saw no media about it, no coverage. In fact, in 2005, they had the European Championship, Women's Championship, and they were playing in non-league grounds. So with all the stadium they had in England, they couldn't even fill. They were getting less than 1,000 people for Germany against Holland. Things like that. 17 years later, they have the event again in England, and they're selling out Wembley Stadium. So, you see where that step's gone. And then the Premier League have now gone, hey, we're getting serious. And then in Spain, Real Madrid and Barcelona kicks Real Madrid's ass now in the women's game. So now they got to get better at it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just lifting it. And we got women at Chelsea and.
Well, I would say also that the United States program and that quantum leap it took has also made Canada go, hey, we're here too.
Yeah. And part of that.
And that's money too. That's money related. The United States threw a ton of money at the program.
Yeah. And MLS was massive for them, right? And MLS nearly folded many, many times in the late 90s. It was just every time Frank Yelp, who was ended up being LA Galaxy's coach when Beckham was there, he was playing for Tampa at the time, who folded, but he said, I'm not sure there's going to be a league next year. And this was every single year for a long time. And they managed to, get a bit of a footing, no TV money or anything like that. And they got a deal now with Apple, but it's been a struggle for them, right? But they are the third most popular league in the United States. Mexican League MX is the biggest. Premier League is next. NBC paid $2.7 billion for 6 years rights for that, which is just incredible. NHL rights that they don't have anymore. It's quite something. So you've seen that growth, and then in Canada we benefited, but MLS for years didn't want to come across the border. They didn't need to.
No.
And we wanted them to, but Garber was reluctant to do that. When they did make that move, it was a slam dunk. And the way that MLS he ran it, you have to give him credit. Toronto SC was just marketed beautifully, and it's been a really smashing success. So is Montreal, so is Vancouver, and so is most of the northern teams, because the league wasn't structured so much on north. They didn't think it was going to be north. They thought it was going to be southern Hispanics going to be supporting it, and then they bring the Mexican team Chivas, LA, so it's Los Angeles Chivas, and they think, well, the Mexican fans. Well, Mexican fans will cheer for Chivas if they're Chivas fans.
Yeah.
But not if they're not cheap.
No.
You know what I mean? So they didn't last long. But then this new LAFC, who just won the championship on the weekend, they've done it really, really well. They got a great stadium. It's small. It's like 20,000, 19,000. It's tight. The atmosphere is just electric, and they've done a fantastic job. And unfortunately, in that final, Max Crepeau, unfortunately.
I'm fascinated by you. You know why? I remember following you again. Again, one of those casual media guys doing a lot of different sports back then, and you're a fantastic player. I wish I would have known you as well as I know you now back when you played in England, because I think your story at the time was way ahead of the curve for a lot of Canadian players. Now, you see Alphonso Davies going to Bayern, Canadians playing in Europe, not just football or soccer, but also basketball, whatever other sport internationally. It's almost commonplace.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to know what it was like for you starting. Take me through the Craig Forrest journey from where you started, falling in love with this round ball, this beautiful game, to where you ended up.
Yeah,
in
I mean, football, I was not playing soccer when I was younger. I was, from 5 years old, I was playing lacrosse, was my box lacrosse was my first love, and still probably my favorite sport I ever played. Like, I just love box lacrosse.
You would have been
right?
impossible to check.
Yeah, well,
were you a keeper or were you
no,
played
I
out?
was around the crease actually, and then we'd basically from 5 to. Do you remember the Gary Gates?
Gates.
Well, they were
Paul
our
Gates.
age, so the two twins
Oh, wow.
were playing for Saanich on the island in Vancouver.
I did not know you.
And they also had the Pepper twins.
Did you play
brothers.
against them?
Yeah,
Oh,
and,
yeah?
and we kicked their ass from 5 to 12.
Are you serious?
And then at 12 it changed,
Oh, yeah?
and that was it.
But they never got a chance to play at Old Trafford. So they're so
Yeah,
so,
right.
But
Yeah.
so you so how did you go from lacrosse to
So I'm playing in the
Soccer.
under 13 Canadian Championships. Happens to be in Brampton, Ontario. So we fly out, and we ended up finishing third. We were disappointed. We thought we were good enough to win that. But anyway, that's another thing. But the goalkeeper, also not a goaltender for the lacrosse team, for the soccer team, was on my lacrosse team. The family wanted to do an RV trip and drive back. So after that tournament, there was a soccer tournament in Coquitlam, and he wasn't going to be back for it. And they asked if I wanted to play. The coach, Alex Zabo, his name was, and do you want to give it a try?
And how old were you again?
12.
12.
Yeah.
Which now, if you consider players today, 12 would be you're a late bloomer. That's you're too
Yeah.
late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We start our kids like at 5 and 6. So you
As
start
a
playing?
goalkeeper, I think you can
Yeah,
get away
yeah.
with it a little
Maybe,
bit more.
yeah.
And especially with North America. I mean, look at this.
Did you ever play out, or were you always a keeper?
Always. Well, yeah, that was, always.
Well,
yeah. I remember the very first goal I
look at the
conceded.
size of you.
I actually remember that, yeah. The first goal I conceded, I remember. It was Parkland School and Poirier down in Coquitlam. And we're playing against an American team, and guy had a breakaway, and I ran out way too early. And I'm like, come on, you have to put it in, right?
Yeah.
And he just chipped me. And I was like, okay, lesson learned there.
So
A little too early.
how did you end up between the posts? Like, you take up this game, but did you like? There are a lot of goalies. Like, again, I hate to make inevitable hockey comparisons, but they love the mask, they love the pads.
Yeah.
You got these big gloves.
Actually, I wish when I was a kid, because remember goalkeepers back then,
Yeah.
Richard Brodeur in Vancouver,
Yeah.
everybody was short and stand-up goalies. Everybody was stand-up goalies.
Yeah.
I mean, Kurt McLean was probably the last stand-up goalie, I would say, pretty around that time.
Did you take any of your goaltending technique from other sports like hockey and
Sure.
and lacrosse?
Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. And then I did some judo, which actually really helped with physical literacy.
For brawls and when you're playing against Mexico.
Well, just falling, just
for
learning
sure.
to fall. And a lot
Wow.
of kids get injured falling. They don't know
Wow.
how to fall. And that's something coaches don't really coach enough. And lots of kids break their arms and wrists and things. And so judo taught you how to do that. So everything kind of fell into place. Hand-eye coordination, lacrosse, hockey,
Yeah.
bit of basketball.
So when did you know that? When did the turning point happen? That you said, "Okay, I can take this to the next level."
Well, after I conceded that first goal, and I was like pretty strong in other sports, it just really bugged me.
Yeah.
And I need to be better at it. And luckily, they said, listen, Robert Bader was the keeper's name and played for my team, lacrosse team. He was going to come back. He's going to be number one. But if you want to stay around, we would love to have you around. So they had a goalkeeper coach, which is just something that even now is very hard to find in just a regular club. A guy willing to sacrifice his time. Rolly Longbottom was his name. He was from Leeds, England, and he was sharp, and he knew enough to get me going. So I was doing one-on-one training from 12 years old, basically until I was 16 when I made the move to England.
Which is like, what again? How does that all happen? Like, again, keep in mind this is back in the 80s, right? And so today we just take that thing. Like, tell me about your parents, everything that was going on, and they're going.
Yeah.
Here's my lacrosse guy is now he's playing soccer and he's going to England. What was it like? What was that dynamic?
Yeah, my mom wasn't all that keen on it. I mean, she was.
You're 16. Did you have a driver's license at the time?
No, I learned to drive there.
Wait a second. So you learned to drive on the other side of the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to come back when I came back in the off season to get my license here, and you remember it was like a couple months waiting list.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, how do I do that? I'm back in and out of Canada.
Yeah.
Somebody said, if you actually go early in the morning, somebody won't show up and you can go in. And that's exactly what I did. I went out, and the guy was like, he thought he had a coffee break because there's nobody doing their license. So he was like, we got this guy. He's all right, come on, kid. So we just drove around the block and came back and parked, and he said, no,
nice.
That'll do.
Nice.
Because he already knew that I was.
Yeah.
I was like 18.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't like I just turned. When's your birthday? Well, today. Like and wanted to sit, right.
So were you homesick at all when you went over there? And were you intimidated by the environment? Were you nervous? Were you anxious?
Yeah.
Did you foresee the career you also had ahead of you when you go to England? And where did you go to at first? I mean, clearly you didn't.
I was lucky because there was a guy in the coaching the Vancouver Firemen at the time, and I played some games when I was young, 13, 14, for the men's fireman team. And that was a crazy experience. These, adult men just dressing room.
Were you still pretty tall? Were you tall at 13, 14?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And the coach was Phil Trenter, and he was actually born in Ipswich, came through their youth system, and ended up in Vancouver, and was a fireman. And anyway, he still had connections at Ipswich Town. Bruce Twomey, another Canadian, actually played for Ipswich beforehand, so they had a little bit of background Canadian connections. And he said, I can get you a trial, so if you pay your way over, and they'll look at you. So I go over there at 16, Heathrow. I get the subway into the
your parents had to pay your way over there.
Yeah,
because you didn't have a job. Probably you're playing soccer a little.
Sure, I'm going to school, so I had my suitcases and end up at Liverpool Street, and it was all black, that cold because it was all
by yourself.
All by myself.
You're kidding me.
And I asked some guy which way Ipswich was, or no, it was
which way to the pitch.
Yeah, and I'm sure he thought I was American, and he sent me the wrong way. So I'm sitting on the subway and I'm watching. I'm like, I'm supposed to be going over here, and so I finally figured it out, get off, and ask somebody, kid, you gotta go the other way. Okay, so I end up in Ipswich, get picked up at the train station, by the chief scout Ron Gray, who always later claimed that, our tentacles are in Canada. And I was like, yeah, Ron, you didn't even come and pick me up at the airport. I was 16 years of age. Thanks a lot, right? Then I literally drove from this train station to my landlady, who I was with for the better part of 2 years, Mrs. Bond, who just, in the timing.
Wait a second.
Beryl Bond.
Mrs. Bond.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bond.
Mrs. Bond. She was amazing. And you think about luck and timing and everything else, and just that alone, she was like, remember, there's no internet, there's no, none of that. Like,
was there a Mr. Bond? Or just Mrs. Bond?
No. Yeah, there was a.
He was busy doing other things around the world.
Yeah, he had died years and years before, but she was just a single old lady and just wanted some company, I think. And she ended up being my second mom, and it was $1 a minute in '84 to phone home. Like, it was just, she had a lock on the phone.
Is she passed?
She has passed, yeah. But she was amazing, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What a journey.
Yeah.
So you get there, you're with Mrs. Bond, you're playing. What was your dream? What was the dream?
Well,
did you ever see it kind of the dominoes falling the way they would for you?
When you're 16, 17, your brain is such in a different place.
Yeah.
I don't think if you're fearless.
Were you just trying to grow? Were you trying to get better?
I was trying to stay out of school and pick up girls.
How did that go? Is that another podcast that you have?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, the girls was great, and in England, actually, they were
What
a
did
little bit
Mrs. Bond have to say about that when you
couldn't bring them in?
You couldn't bring girls home.
That was I could do anything. I could stay out as late as I wanted. I could do anything, but never bring girls back. And one night I did.
And?
I figured I could sneak her in, and the homes it was like Coronation Street, right? I think
That's what I was thinking of. I was thinking of Coronation Street.
I can sneak her in, and we can, stay downstairs and everything. Anyway, she didn't talk to me for 3 weeks. Like, literally, Mrs. Bond, come on. She's just nothing. She'd make me dinner and doing all that. But
did she go to many of your matches, Mrs. Bond?
She never went to any games, no.
Really?
Yeah. She'd read the newspaper.
Did she
and
follow
she
your
believed
career later?
every word of it. Like, if the newspaper said I played shit, she would, but no matter what I told her, no, it's right here.
So she was like a second mom. So did she follow your career later as well, and how often did you talk with Mrs. Bond?
Oh, I say when Yeah, I was over her place once a week.
Oh, isn't that
Yeah,
awesome?
for the rest of it, yeah. And I brought Frankie Yallop, but he was another good time. He was born in Watford, but his parents moved to New Westminster when he was 10, and then he was basically back in England when he was 14. So he had a short spell there. But so I knew Frankie a little bit, and he was a great help, just having somebody on the ground and a connection and a friend, and he was super helpful. Mrs. Bond came and said, "Yeah, bring Frankie over for dinner." We had mashed potatoes every night. I think it was like 57 nights straight. And I hear Frankie's like, he's sitting there at the table, and Mrs. Bond's over my shoulder, she's making dinner and whatever. And Frankie's like looking at me, he's like, "Hey, like, have a look," right? I turn around, and Mrs. Bond, she didn't have any teeth. And she had this big dewdrop hanging off her nose. Right? And she's mashing the potatoes. And I just turned around, I was like, "Oh no, Frank, oh no." And then he goes, like, "Look again." I turn back and it's gone, and she's mashing the potatoes. And I'm just like, and he goes, "Oh, Mrs. Bond, by the way, no mashed potatoes for me."
No potatoes for me tonight.
I couldn't say it. I've had it 57 nights in a row.
Oh,
So.
you wonder what that little extra flavor was. Oh, that's priceless.
Oh man, the dewdrop in, he called it.
Drop in. So, what you went through was probably like a kid from England coming to Canada to play a North American sport, realizing
it would be like them coming and playing hockey
and realizing you're in the hub, because let's face it,
hub.
You're in the hub.
Yeah,
you're in the hub where every weekend, every week, they sing, they dance, they drink, they party,
and they're all British. All the players are English or Scottish or all the islands there.
You must have loved that.
I did, but it was tough because football players generally coming from working class, lower working class, right? That's where they're coming from. So we had Scots guys fighting against the English because they got Irish guys, and I'm 16 trying to figure out what's going on. I hadn't learned this in school yet, Why do you guys hate something? So anyway, that was a learning experience. And there was bullying. They would, guys would test
They kind of tease you because you're a Canadian. They
they call me Yank all the time, and you can't get.
You don't even, we're not Yankees,
right? But you can't get upset about it because they'll just keep on, right? It'll just be more because they just love winding up and taking the pee all the time. And so I had some scraps with some of the younger guys, and we had a really good youth team, and we were very successful in England with our youth team. And what shocked me the most out of it was when that 2 years of youth team was up and the contracts were up, there was only 3 of us from that team got contracts. And I was like, wow, we're a good team. Like, where are these guys? Like, we just let them go. And then I was like, at the odds of doing something, it's just getting there and getting past that, And a lot of the young guys, they have this mentality that and I did too, to a certain extent. You just don't fear anything. So you think you're always going to be okay until you're not. But it was I was like, wow, the odds are just stacked against you. And being Canadian is a black mark, right? I mean, if I'm coming from Brazil, they're paying my way, even if they hadn't seen me, just because, you're from Brazil, right? So you have to sort of really help with that. And being a foreigner, it was more difficult, and you couldn't be as good. You had to be better than them, and that was a test as well as time went on. But I think with Ipswich, even though they're a rural town, at the time when I went there, they were one of the best teams in Europe. They had won the UEFA Cup, which was it was meant something back then. They finished second in the top flight. They were the smallest town to win a European championship up until Villarreal recently, when they beat Manchester United a couple of years ago. So small town, but perfect for, couldn't get into too much trouble, but enough,
You should have a book. I don't know if you have a book. You should have a book. No. You should have your own Netflix series. But, I mean, the great stories that you must have that a lot of athletes wouldn't have been able to experience. You must look back on it now, because I'm sure it's a blur. I'm sure it went so fast. All your playing days went so fast that maybe you couldn't stop and smell the roses, if you know what I mean.
Well, but saying that, I do remember
you had some great moments.
Year 9, year 10, year 11, year 12. You're just like,
they get a little slower.
This is going on forever, And in fact, when I was done, I had my fill. Like, I was doing it for the money more than anything. At that
nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. But you know what I mean? Like I was happy to be back up. I was happy to play, 10, 15 games a season. That was fine. I was making more money than I was in 1992 when the inaugural day of the World or the Premier League, right? So the money just kept going up and up, and so it was good.
I should ask you. So a couple of quick ones. I could sit and talk with you all day. The best player or players you've played against or with?
Oh, well.
Like where you sometimes went, oh my God.
Yes.
That's what?
Well, it was interesting because I saw one of the sites in England posted something on social media about who's the best player you ever played with, just general public. And then I started thinking to myself, if I was going to pick 11, my best 11 that I played with, and I started going through with them, I had like 10 strikers. I got Davor Schuker, I got Vialli, I got Zola. Whoa. I got one shot from Costa Rica, who was fantastic. Welsh, John Hartson, Paul Kitson, Kawamia, who went to Arsenal after Ipswich. Like midfielders like John Work, who was a Scottish international playing the World Cup.
You'd be scoring a lot of goals.
Yeah, a lot of goals. And then against, we played against Bebeto, Romario, Klinsmann,
wow.
All the top Brazilians, we got that draw against Brazil a month before they won the World Cup in '94. So we were decent at that time. So just about every top player. And that's one thing about my career was, my ambition certainly was to, I wanted my teammates in the dressing room to respect you. That's the most important thing. All the noise that goes around everywhere else, that's just noise, like I said. But if the players respect you and they in that dressing room, and you're in the dressing room with like Vialli and Zola, and then after we won the Gold Cup, actually went back, and I was back at that time. I was with West Ham. We played Chelsea.
Do you have many pints with those guys?
No, not really. It sort of changed, and with London being so big, the guys are spread out, and so they socializing was more certainly in Ipswich because it's so small. We hung out a lot.
You were like superstars everywhere you go, right? Everybody.
Yeah, that was almost. In hindsight, I think I would have moved an hour out of Ipswich as opposed to because it was tough. Like it was guys, like they were hard. Like if your club wasn't doing well, and meaning well, I mean like outside the top half. You're getting it everywhere. You're getting it at the restaurant. You're getting it at the supermarket. You can't go out on a Saturday night.
Especially after losses or droughts or losing streaks.
Yep. Yeah.
Wins are great.
Yeah. We would decide.
Great. You're on the bar. You're doing belly shots.
Right. Everybody's buying drinks, right? Hey. And then the next week you're like, no, we're not going out. So we decided on a Saturday at 5:00 after the game what we did, whether it was a house get together or we might go out, right? Because you didn't want to take it. We were I remember Frank's girlfriend at the time, she had a birthday, turning 21, I think. And we played an away game in the FA Cup, and I think it was Barnsley. So we were a long ways from home. We lose this FA Cup game. We played like crap. And we would never go out when we got back. And by the time we got back late, we went straight to the nightclub. Yeah. It was after midnight. And we were spotted. And basically the bouncers came over and said, guys, we're going to hold them in here. You guys have to leave, but we'll give you 5 minutes to get out of here before they fucking kill you. Right? So we're like, yep, okay. Yeah, and that's our own fans. So it was hard. And then my dad, I'd tell my dad about it, and he'd be like, Craig, you gotta realize these guys are, they work hard, they pay for the tickets, they pay your wages, and so you sort of have to have a thick skin.
Did your parents become big football fans, or were they beforehand?
No.
No. How proud?
My dad still
must they have been of you, though? Eh?
They loved every minute of it. My dad just loved it, and he never really grasped the sort of the tactical side of the game.
Would he be in the crowd like overseas? Would he get in there with the scarves and the singing and that, or would he be like the dads in sports now, the serious dads who go in the corner and kind of? It's because what the thing is. It's really tough to be a goalkeeper's dad or mom. It's good when you make the saves, but you can make 20 saves.
Yep.
Just one goal.
Yeah, and everybody, all the other parents are like, how did he not save that? Right? Oh, it's a shitty position. For the most part, it's just like...
There's the title of your book right
shitty
there.
Position.
The shitty position.
Yeah, I had a front row to the shitty position.
Yeah, but you were absolutely incredible at what you did. Yeah. And like I said, I could speak with you for hours, but I just have two more for you. Is there, in your mind, or maybe in your dreams, even late at night, a moment in time that is etched? Maybe it's a save, maybe it's a win, that you still live over and relive over and over, and it's still vivid. You know, that memory that is still always vivid because you played a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I have good ones and bad ones. I mean, I was beat 9-0 at Manchester United, so that was a record, and it still is tied for the record. There's now 3 or 4 goalkeepers, so we've always kidded around about that.
How many saves did you make though? If you led at 9, you had to make a lot of saves.
Oh, most of it was
like a shooting gallery.
Yeah, Andy Cole scored 5 that day at Old Trafford, and most of them were tap-ins because it was like breakaways, save, and then he just was in the right place at the right time. Mark Hughes, another legendary player that I played with at Chelsea and against at Manchester United. Yeah, it was that was character building. I tell you, getting beat 9-0. I thought it was 10. I literally thought it was 10. I stopped looking at the score.
So you relive that more, like you must have had one unbelievable moment, like unbelievable save, that diving save, and I'm sure you had tons of them.
Well,
but is there one in particular off of the foot of someone and you just went, oh my, I could live forever.
It was internationally, and I'll tell you, when I taught about lacrosse, I came back and played, so I was backup, but we're going to play the next season in a game in Washington State in a tournament. So I got to start for that tournament. And the game, we ended up going so far, we went to penalty kicks. And I remember the last penalty kick, if I'd saved it, we would have won the game, or I can't remember exactly. But I do remember I went the right way. It was right there. I got it. And it was wet, and it squirmed underneath me, and it seemed to just, like a bar of soap in the bathtub, in the net.
Really?
And it bugged me for my fucking whole career.
Really?
And then, in the Gold Cup in 2000, Esprilla, one of the top Colombian players, he's got a penalty with 10 minutes left. The same thing happens. It squirms underneath me, but it doesn't squirm through and in the net. It squirms into my hands. And that second, I actually thought about it, that moment, and it was exactly the fucking same thing when I was 12 years old.
Something?
Yeah.
Because that's what sports is about. And you've had triumphs, you've had losses, but maybe just as a finality, because I know there are probably a lot of parents and soccer fans and kids, particularly kids who are watching or listening. Maybe a piece of advice. You know, now that you can look back and maybe like that letter to your younger self, or your a younger self when you're, parents of your younger self.
Yeah.
Well, just not so much advice, but perhaps just, that divining rod of some sort of inspiration moving forward. Because there aren't many Craig Forrests out there. There aren't many Altidores out there.
And Davies. I'm all for being positivity and pushing that into people, but you also have to, have a passion for what you're doing. And it doesn't matter whether it's sports, it could be anything. But make sure you have a passion for it. Do something that you've got something in it, that you want to do it. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you love it, really. The money is a side thing for it. And that's in kind of any job. I think that if you're going to take a company over, if that guy's more interested in money in your takeover than he is actually the love of this company, I wouldn't touch it. There was that, and it was that kind of lost my train of thought here a little bit. We were talking about, but what was the question again?
We can edit.
Edit
that little bit of. So even a mantra that you might have for those parents or those kids or those coaches out there.
Be realistic. I don't like the selling of the dream that you see in every sport. In Canada, obviously, most of all is hockey. Expensive, really
It shouldn't
expensive.
cost you anything to get better.
It shouldn't.
It
shouldn't. And we have that problem in soccer, and we have that problem with any sport.
And it never was a problem in soccer because it was a simple round ball, and you could come from whatever neighborhood.
Yeah, and it's still relatively cheap. Like say it costs you a couple $100 for a few, whatever. And 90% of the soccer players are playing for the fun of it. They're playing because all the right reasons, quite honestly.
Yeah.
They're playing. You want to play house league, and that's where your buddies are. Play house league. If your parents drive their kids so hard, right, and they're just like, you're going to send your kid to this big academy and all that, and it's going to cost $6,000 a year and whatever. It's getting expensive in soccer. Nothing like hockey again, but it's pricing people out. Alphonso Davies is more of a community store than a football store. The support of him around Edmonton, he couldn't afford to get involved in soccer.
It's the extra training, the extra coaches, the travel teams, all of that.
You need that support. So in Canada, we pay to play. And in the States, they pay to play. Even more so, coaches make really good livings, but the actual access to all that is expensive. So if you look at the women's national team in the United States, they're primarily white. They're white privileged women that come from families that can afford the academies to get to IMG and all these different things. And it's definitely something that's talked about. I think there's only over a dozen black women to play for the U.S. national team. Like it's definitely an issue, and that is why. So you're missing out on a massive amount of people. So the system doesn't really, isn't conducive to what it is like with the Brazilians playing in the streets, in the favelas, and then you got the African boys playing in the streets, and that's all they did.
They're playing with a plastic bag that's
Anything.
full of feathers. And,
Anything. I've been to Africa on a few occasions, and I played there as well as been there for some charity events, things, and played with the kids in the street. And you can see why they can play in a phone booth.
Talent, yeah.
The international guys, they might be a little bit
They
technically.
play all day.
They play all day. They fit as, and they can run, and they might be tactically a little bit inept. And that's really what the African team's problems is really at the World Cup level, and they've never quite got there over the edge. They just lack that a little bit of discipline and tactical nuance.
Isn't it fascinating though? Because I being in Africa myself and at those places, and I remember playing with the kids, so much fun. The joy that these kids have playing, considering they have nothing economically. And it goes to show you that sometimes all you need is that dream or just playing. Playing.
Yeah. Well, Precious for Toronto Raptors. I mean,
Yes,
Nigerian.
Precious,
He just grew out. He got too big for soccer.
Yeah.
And then the things have worked out for him.
Yeah. Pascal Siakam, same thing in
Same
Cameroon.
thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
I could chat all day. I'm sorry I take up so much of your time.
No.
But listen,
I got. This is what I got nothing to do.
Well,
man.
you know what? We could just stay here
We
till
don't
the
work
World
on
Cup.
TV anymore.
Yeah, exactly. We could just sit on the couch and talk.
Yeah.
Finally, though, the World Cup. Give me your Craig Forrestization of what Canada can do at this World Cup.
Well, I know what they will do or what try to do. That's pretty evident. They're going to have a go. And what I mean by that is, you can watch a lot of World Cup games, and quite honestly, the last few have been okay. But there were years where World Cups were, if you want to watch good football, watch the Premier League, watch the Champions League, watch the league football. That's the best of the best. Because you can hand pick your best. Look at Man City; they got the best players from all around the world, and they put them together. Cost is no issue, right? So that's something that is a factor. And with Canada, they could get cut open with a couple passes on counterattacks. They're going to be susceptible to that. But with John Herbin and his team, he knows the strengths in the attacking zone. And this is the crazy thing. And I wish I really had that. Like, I wish I had Alfonso and Jonathan David and Eustáquio that's playing at Porto right now. I mean, this kid decided to play. He could have played for Portugal, but they weren't interested in him. So he decides to play Canada. They would be interested in him now. I think he'd be in the Portuguese team if he hadn't already decided to play for Canada. And he's killing it at Porto.
We'll take him.
So you got Tejan Buchanan at Bruges. He's also goes into the knockout stages of the Champions League in Europe. So you got some players that are playing at, nearly at the top end. So they're just under that radar a little bit. And then, but at the back, it's weak. So they're going to push in. They're going to try to challenge, and they're going to try to score goals. He's like, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Let's get a win.
If you saw Canada all of a sudden put 11 behind the ball, they've never done that.
No.
And one of the major concerns that I have with the team is that most of them, and I was looking at the games I play, like 50% of them were against European. Well, we in South America played against Chile, played a couple times, played against Brazil 3 times, played against Korea and Japan, and played in Africa against Morocco and Iran. And so I played all these places. They haven't had that experience. And part of that is the Nations League that was created, which I like, but it keeps you in CONCACAF. So you're playing all these teams, and a lot of the games that they played before the last group stage were against teams we never used to have to play, like St. Kitts and Nevis and, even Bermuda and countries that I've never even heard of, these little islands. So they just pump them, right? And so statistically, it looks really good. But Tejan Buchanan, I just talked about, he's never played, I don't think, again against a team outside of that region. And recently they played against Qatar and Uruguay, beat against Qatar, lost to Uruguay, who was, out of 2 quality. So that was a quality team, lost 2-0. Those are the first games they played against anybody. So they got a game against Bahrain, they got a game against Japan before the World Cup to warm up. But, that worries me a little bit that they haven't had that experience playing against other nations, and just the little nuances that are different, and even refereeing from different regions, and just knowing all these different things about what you're dealing with when you go in a game against a European team or an African team or South American, all different. So we're going to see how they're going to handle it.
You're like the Rain Man of soccer. You're a soccer savant.
Yeah,
I love.
I'm institutionalized. You know what I mean? Like I can't get out of it.
But because you love it, and that shines through. Give me a pick. Who's going to win the World Cup? Besides Canada,
I can't get past Brazil.
Yeah,
I can't get past. It's just who's going to play and who's going to take and who's going to be behind Neymar. They've got so much talent. They actually left Firmino, who's got 6 goals and 12 for Liverpool. He's had a resurgence. They decided to leave him. So we couldn't afford to do that.
Yeah.
Imagine that. So they're so deep. So I got Neymar, Golden Boot. I think they're going to win it. I got a soft spot for Argentina. I like to see Messi actually pull it off, and they could. Also a very good World Cup qualifying. Didn't lose in qualifying. Brazil didn't either, but Brazil's just got that extra little bit of, magic. And
that's the word, magic. That's what the World Cup's about. I just can't wait. November 23rd, Canada, Belgium to start it off. I want to spend some time watching some of these matches with you, because there's a time delay, and you're going to be seen on Sportsnet, of course, pre and post analyzing. And of course, you'll be on it like 5 times a day on Footy Prime, won't you? Like that.
I think we're going to do 2 a day. Two short ones. I think. Well, Sharms is going to do. Him and Brennan will do. Yeah. Well, they're going to be in Qatar, so they'll be on the ground.
You're going to be the Joe Rogan of soccer. You're going to be everywhere.
Wouldn't mind his numbers.
Oh, buddy, that was so much fun. Thank you.
Always good to see you. Good to see you. Congratulations on everything.
Yeah, thanks. You too, man. I cannot wait for the World Cup.
Yeah. Craig
Forrest, everybody. He's the man. Enjoy the World Cup. Thanks for being part of the Rodcast.
The Rodcast with Rod Black, brought to you by North Star Bets. That's a win.